So then I was, when you're talking about taking the good and the bad from your different leadership and making it your own, I always think to myself, again, giving people like the benefit of the doubt, like maybe she was just like in a not good space at that time,
Yeah.
maybe she was exposed to something that I don't have any knowledge about. Maybe, or maybe she was just flat out prejudiced or racist. I don't know.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
but that was like a really wild thing to say to a young guy who's just showing up to the installation for the first time. But what I'll tell you is that I ended up having a really hard time. I had a really hard time with my immediate leadership at the time. And I was on my way out, Jose. Like, I'm not going to,
Yep.
I was on my way out. Had things continued, I think I would have been, I don't think I would have made it a year. Right. And I remember reflecting and thinking to myself, I really need this to work. I really need this Air Force thing to work because I don't have anything back at home, And one of the main reasons why I joined was because high school sweetheart had ended up going away to college, and I felt like such a loser that I wasn't able to go away the way she did. And then she ended up like, through her own growth, like hooking up with her RA, which crushed me, like literally crushed me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I just wasn't sure. I had no direction. I wasn't sure which way to go. So when I ended up choosing the Air Force and making it so far that I made it through basic training, I made it through tech school. Now I'm at my first installation, and now I'm being subject to prejudice, racist comments, because that was just the one of many, right? And I was really trying to think to myself, like, man, like what's happening here? But back to what you were saying about mentorship, there was somebody who didn't work in my department who I think could kind of see that I was having a hard time. He would talk to me. His name was Master Sergeant Martin, but at first they were calling him Master Sergeant Rhodey. And I didn't understand, like, I thought that was his name, but what it really was that he was retiring in 6 months. And the Rhodey stands for retired on active duty. So he was a short timer, right? So he's on his way out. But he's like, hey man, you should come by my office in the mornings. Just whenever. So I worked in the hospital. I was doing medical logistics. So I would have to deliver to all the accounts in the hospital, all the different medical supplies. So while I was, in his part of the hospital, I would go talk to him, 10-minute little mentorship, 15, 20, 30. And one of the three things that he, told me early on, he's like, hey man, you're having a hard time like transitioning and so forth. Yeah. He's like, try doing some of these things I'm going to tell you. And he was like, hey, like, what time do you come into work? What time does your duty day start? Duty day starts at 7:30. What time do you show up? I show up at 7:30. He's like, no, listen, come in at 7. I'm like, 7? He's like, just trust me, come in at 7. What time does your duty day end? Like, ends at 4:30. No, your duty day ends at 4:45. Okay, just do this. I'm like, okay. He's like, do you know how to make a pot of coffee? I'm like, no, I don't know how to make a pot. Because growing up in New York City, we don't make a pot of coffee. You go to the corner store, you get your coffee, you keep going. He's like, learn how to make a pot of coffee. So he teaches me how to make a pot of coffee, right? So I go to the BX, I buy a coffee maker, I bring it to the office, and I start showing up at 7, making a pot of coffee. And then the last thing he tells me is, if there's nothing going on, like if you're done for the day, because I worked in a warehouse, he's like, just pick up a broom. He's like, sweep the floor till you can't sweep it no more. He's like, things will turn around. Jose, and I started doing that. And before you know it, within like 3-6 months later, like we got some new people in. Now we had some more diversity. And I had turned around this, call it, narrative or so forth that was I shouldn't say targeted, but the narrative changed, right? I am so grateful for that opportunity that I got a chance to meet someone like that, because look at me now, right? 24 years later, retired. I don't know that would have happened without someone taking out the time to share some mentorship, So
this